Hi, Becky.
Hey Becky. So this week we got to sit down with the beautiful, wonderful pod member Solas, and it was just such a joy to talk to her and expand on our conversation that we started in the last episode all about desire.
Yeah, and it's one of my favourite topics. And I think what's beautiful from within the pod already is we're hearing people's different perspectives on desire. And I think that's really what came through strongly in this conversation, wasn't it, with Solace?
Totally, yeah. And how actually she didn't really resonate with the word desire, which I think probably there's quite a few people that also feel that way. And I know I definitely have, like I think I said in the first episode, I have an interesting relationship with desire and how I view it. And I think having Solace's perspective on that whole theme and topic was wonderful because it actually allowed us to explore a different avenue and a slightly different nuance. So I'd love to know, what was one of your biggest takeaways for this conversation that's coming up?
I feel like when she says that for her, desire is more being in flow with life, it was almost this like, aha, like that's how she describes desire. And that is essentially how I feel about desire. But I just love that everyone can express it differently. And I think it's just so beautiful that feeling into like what would it be like if I was in flow with life? What would open up? Yes. It's such a beautiful question, isn't it? Instead of like, what do I desire? Which can feel more ego, to be more, what am I open to flow through?
And I think definitely that nuance where, I mean, Solas talks a lot about how her decisions that led her to now living in Italy, which is an incredible story, but actually it was driven by need. But when we kind of actually got into the depths of it, is it need or was it actually a version of soul desire? And actually, can our desires be the needs that we have for ourselves? Like, I think it was such an interesting, different perspective, which I really, really resonated with. And as a self-relationship coach, which Solas is, there was also some beautiful conversation around what self-relationship is. And that for me was like, I think it's pretty early in the conversation, I'm not going to spoil it, but definitely the way that she framed what self-relationship is and describing that, again, I was like, oh, right, hold on, this is like, I think I have a good relationship with myself. But when she started to go into it, I was like, do you know what, there is probably room for work here, and room for improvement. It was just fascinating to hear her perspective.
Yeah, and for everyone, I think whatever your relationship is with yourself, there's something to learn here, isn't it? Or something just to open your mind with the way that she describes it and the way she helps her clients. It's incredible.
Yeah, amazing. Well, everybody, with no further ado, enjoy our episode with the wonderful Solas. And if you want to find out anything about her, we're going to leave all her links below this episode, wherever you're listening or watching it. Enjoy the episode. So Solas, such a pleasure to have you on the Doing Business Differently podcast with us. So I think it'd be a really good place to start with you just introducing yourself to people and letting everybody know who you are, because you are a wonderful human.
Oh,
so
thank you.
Please share how you would like to introduce yourself.
So I'm Solas, originally from Ireland, currently living in Italy, and I'm a self-relationship coach. I work online with clients just to help them deepen and connect their relationship with themselves, because we invest so much energy, headspace, and time in our relationship with other people in the world. And we forget that from the moment we're born to the moment we die, we are in an active relationship with ourselves, and we get to construct that and choose how supportive, loving, healthy that is. But often, like with all relationships, it needs a bit of help and guidance sometimes. So I love working with people who want to get to know themselves again, who want to really kind of become self-aware, heal from some of the baggage that they've carried in life so far, and kind of move forward in with much more clarity, but also conscious living for me is a big thing. So it's about helping people to realize what they want and need from life and make choices. Just those small choices add up to your life just suddenly changing.
Oh, I love that. Do you know what? I've also only just weirdly made the connection about, our theme for this month is desire, and talking about self-relationship. Actually, the whole thing of desire and what do you desire from your relationship with yourself,
Yes.
that's like a whole massive thing there, isn't it? Because I suppose, like, we talked about when Becky and I were just discussing the topic amongst ourselves about, like, what do we desire and getting clear on that. And actually, I think there is probably an interesting intersection almost between that relationship with yourself and how much you even allow yourself to explore what you desire.
I think it's huge. I think when we think when I think about desire and when you asked me to come on to this topic, my first thought was I don't desire things. I generally do things out of need, a need for an easier life or a more nurturing life or a more accommodating lifestyle. And because I think when I think of desire, I think, a 5-star luxury hotel holiday for 2 weeks, or a new spec car. I've never had a new car, but do you know what I mean? You think about these lofty things. And I had to rephrase my thinking when I was coming on the podcast today to be like, well, actually, what I have desired in life and what has been my drive has been simplicity and ease of lifestyle to accommodate who I am and the needs that I have as a human with multiple chronic illnesses and stuff. And it's about kind of going, oh, desire doesn't have to be a big lofty thing. It can be a small thing. And I think when you're talking about self-relationship, how many people even acknowledge they have an active relationship with themselves? It's just something you take for standard. You're stuck with yourself, you make it work.
Yes.
Is that actually? Because when you think of desires in relation to people, you're going to start thinking externally to romance, partnership, children, love, all of that stuff. And you kind of go, oh no, actually, when you take the focus and go, what's your desire internally? A lot of the stuff we want externally, we don't realize we can create a huge amount of it internally. And it's not to say that you don't then go outwards for it. It just means you don't have to. There's not that external view all the time of desire, like of need, of like must have, must go get. It becomes I've got it all on my own. And if someone comes along and they can add something or they just make me laugh loads or whatever, they make me feel good, then that's great. They're an added bonus. And I remember actually decades ago hearing Pamela Anderson say that. She said, I don't have a need for other people in my life. Everything I need and want is within myself.
Yeah.
So anyone who comes into my world has to be an added bonus. And, from the figure that she was, the kind of sex symbol she was, it was a real deep kind of, wow, she's so right. She's got it sorted in her head.
I love that, Celeste. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, because I think a lot of people have different opinions and definitions, but what do you feel is a relationship with yourself? And what does that look like for you and your clients?
Yeah, see, that's a really good question and something I think I forget to answer for my audience who, when kind of marketing my business. Because for me, a relationship with myself is the exact same as a relationship with anyone else, which is how can I support myself best? How can I take the time and energy to try and understand, like how often do we try and understand our partner so that we can use the right words to support them or do those kind gestures that make them feel so loved? And that is what a relationship with myself is. So what do I need today is always my question when I get up. If I'm not feeling well, how can I bring a little joy or a spark of joy somewhere in the day to look forward to? I have done a huge amount of active work at one point in my 30s where I completely changed the inner dialogue. And so I mostly 99% of the time only live with positive phrased dialogue in my mind, and so I will often have moments where I think, God, I'm so in love with you. You're so great. I'm so glad I'm doing life with you, which sounds so strange to say because that's what we want from our relationship with other people is to be like, there's certain emotions I don't give much energy to, but you have to be willing to see yourself as you are and not be a dick, not be a dick to yourself about it. To be like, look, if you met any people from my past, especially ex-boyfriends, they'd say she was an effed up bitch, and I wouldn't say you're wrong. I was the best version of who I could be at that time, but I'm not perfect. And to get to who I am now, I had to be willing to face the reality of what my best effort was then and how it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for me. It wasn't kind of love, like it wasn't the right kind of love to be having with other people. So it's that thing of owning all of it, all the bits you want to hide from yourself, all the bits you want to hide from the outside world. Having a relationship with yourself is being willing to face all of that, but to do it with kindness and compassion. Because for me, I'm a good person. I've always tried to be the best person I can be, but that doesn't mean that I've always been a good person to everyone around me or to myself, or I've always been the healthiest person. And to be able to face all that with compassion and forgiveness rather than just shame and wanting to hide is where you can kind of then just completely be free.
Yeah. And you know what? I would say that's why I love having you actually inside the pod, Solas, because I think you're so good at advocating for that for yourself, but you also advocate for it in other people all the time. So when we have like our group discussions and things like that, you're always there being like, okay, but can we just check in with you? Can we just can I just ask a question from this perspective? Like, what's driving that? What's going from it? So it's such a beautiful, you're such a beautiful part of that community. So just a little bit of gratitude for you right here. And I think how you're describing, it's funny, like when you said it, of like, you know, a relationship with yourself, it's the same thing as relationships with other people. It was like, oh yeah, of course it is. Like, wow, it's so simple. And yet, like you say, we don't think about it. And I think, you know, not that I want to make this into like a whole gender conversation or anything, but I think particularly as women, I think we're often taught to like center other people's desires more than our own. And so actually choosing to look at what you desire and how you can start to, you know, focus on that is almost an act of rebellion, which is crazy, right?
Yeah. I personally think we as women have it easier in that sense, because I don't think men even feel they're allowed to acknowledge they have a relationship with themselves. Because I think when you look at the role of men, I think there's still a huge amount of, you know, that thing of they must be the carer of the family, financially hold it. There's not an emotional component, but there's a huge responsibility component. And I think they don't even have the luxury to be like, oh, how do I have a relationship with myself? Because they're like, my role is for others, but in a different way to a woman's. And I think you're right. I know I was raised in the 80s in small town Ireland, and it was a case of everything is outwards. What do other people need from your politeness, from your conversational engagement, your time, your energy, everything? It was taboo to love yourself, to even use that phrase. You just got mocked. Like my mother does say to me, she used to say to me, she's now stopped, thankfully, was, you know, I love myself, who do you love? And I'd be like, I do love myself, but I love you just as much and I treat you just as well as I treat myself. So, you know, quit with the, if you don't put yourself first, that's you to own. For me, putting myself first, I'm not going to be ashamed of that, because I am a loving person. I treat other people just as well as I treat myself, but not above and beyond, do you know? And I think I know I was raised that it's always above and beyond. You're always making others feel good, cared for, supported. And we do it in hope that someone behind us looks and goes, let me take care of you, let me support you. Do you know, it's this kind of imaginary, I'll do it for someone else and someone will eventually come into my life as we dream the dream partner. And they're going to do the mind reading and they're going to suddenly make me, their energy and care is going to go into me. And what happens is we get stuck in the place of disappointment then, because everyone has their limitations in how, no matter how much energy another person puts into trying to get to know you, they cannot know you better than you know yourself if you put in the energy. Do you know what I mean? And if you don't know yourself, how are they meant to figure you out? They can just figure you out through their lens. So I'm one of these people that, like, I will say to partners, I'm not often in a relationship, but when I am, I will say to partners, here's a tip. Here's how to handle me when. Here's the exact word to say to me when I'm hormonal and looking for an argument. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, some of them have said, I don't want to be told what I should say. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I'm just trying to give you the easy option when I'm being unreasonable in my hormonal state, whatever. But I can. And again, with managers, when I've worked in jobs, I've gone in and said, if you want to get the most work out of me, ask me to do a task. Don't tell me. That's just a little, because I know what works best, what's going to get you the best response from me. And so to know yourself means you can then share yourself and save people the hassle if they don't want to have to slowly figure it out. Because how much energy in a loving relationship is wasted through misunderstanding. They're trying their best to be what they think you need and how you need it, with, only tidbits of guidance. And you want them to love you, but they haven't said it or done it in the exact tidbit way that you need. And then all of this want for love kind of smashes head on and gets a little bit, fragmented. And you're like, oh, I find it so sad when I think, like, if you knew yourself, you'd be able to say to your partner, this is what I need when, rather than your partner being like, what am I meant to do? What do you need right now? Tell me. You should know, like all that malarkey.
I mean, that's very relatable. I think we can all connect with that. And I think what's really beautiful here is like hearing you speak around that relationship with yourself. I feel like it is this really beautiful thing with desire, right? And as you were saying, like, yourself so that you can share it with others. This is how I respond best. This is how you get the most out of me. And I'm curious, that relationship with yourself, with relationship with desire, from your opinion and like from your expertise with what you do and how you support people, do you see a correlation with when people learn to, as you say, be more patient with themselves, to love themselves, to support themselves? Does desire flourish? Do you see more desire coming through?
Desire is a word that is not a regular in my vocabulary. So to me, it's just natural. It's flow. What you get is, with the knowing, is you get to, with ease, create a life that supports you. And if that's fulfilling your desires or goals, meeting your needs in a way that doesn't feel like you're taking from other people because you've learned to take up space. I mean, anything is possible when you have a good relationship with yourself. And as I say, like, desire is not a word I hugely use because I always associate it with lofty things. But when I was thinking about how to tie in desire here, I was like, well, I guess you could phrase that my relationship with myself has led me to create a lifestyle that continuously adapts and accommodates what I need as a person.
Yeah.
And the simplicity and the ease that I need to live. And I guess the desire then would be just for a life that is easeful and simple. And so whatever you desire, it just becomes a known. I guess that's what my struggle with the word desire is, because for me, it's just a known. It's not a desire, it's just a known. I knew I needed, like, I live in Italy now, and this came about because I got sick about 6 years ago, and I had to give up my life in Edinburgh, my independence, move back to my parents in Ireland to recover physically. And so as I recovered physically within the environment, unfortunately, it's also an environment that triggers my childhood trauma stuff. So my mental health dipped. So I got to a point where I couldn't live there, and I couldn't afford not to live there because I wasn't earning a large wage. And so I ended up moving out and just using savings to rent. So this is how my brain works. I needed somewhere to live. I had a certain amount of savings left and I didn't want to waste them. So I searched Ireland-wide for the cheapest room to rent, like in all of Ireland. And I moved to the other side of the country to the cheapest accommodation because I needed time, and the most I could get out of my money time-wise was to go somewhere where it was cheaper to live than Dublin. And so when I was there, I gave myself 6 months to kind of just rest and recuperate and not worry too much about money, to say, like, the savings I'm going to use them for the next 6 months to rent. But I realized I needed a long-term solution. My need was a safe space where I could live independently, a roof over my head that was mine, that could not be taken away. But I needed it on an extreme budget. And Ireland does not do anything on a budget. So I decided to look around Europe. And I found a 20,000 euro apartment in Italy. I kept on looking just to make sure I was, that was the best one. And yeah, it ended up being the best one. A month later, I flew over and I bought it. Not because I had any desire to live in Italy, although it's great, let me tell you. I do not know Italian. I had never been here before. It was an affordable roof over my head that no one could ever take away from me because I was paying in the last bit of cash savings that I had. That wasn't desire to me, although it's a very desirable story, isn't it? That was need. I knew what my needs were in that moment. I knew what I needed to be able to heal further and try further. So for me, I often use the word need instead of desire because it comes from a place of knowing what I need and therefore changing my whole world if necessary, or doing something out of the norm to make sure I meet that need for myself. So I now have a mortgage-free home in sunny Italy where it's currently 27 degrees, where the living cost is like a quarter of Ireland. And I don't know if I'll be here forever, but for now, it has given me everything I knew I needed to heal and grow for the next leg of my journey.
Yeah, and of course, lots of beautiful cats and kitties that call
beautiful
your home their home too.
Yes, they do. I am the cat lady. Italy comes with a lot of stray cats, and I just feel like if this was my saving sanctuary, it's an honor to be able to offer it to them too. And so I know it's a really challenging thing because I'm not really connected to the word desire, because for me, I guess because my childhood was quite traumatic and it left me with complex PTSD, and so there's always been a large amount of survivalism. Mm-hmm. So desire, it is a lofty word for me, I think.
Because I think that's a beautiful thing though, because I think, and I have heard from so many people, and I've experienced it myself too, with just this energy attached to desire. Like you say, it feels like these big things, I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to live in, I had a 5-bedroom house in the country and it has to look like this, that's what success means, that will mean I've made it, that will mean I'm safe. And I feel that's what really prompted our first podcast around ego desires and soul desire. And the word desire for me as a mindset and energetics coach is tapping into the part of us soulfully, right? The ego desires are very much of what I want. I want this. Soul desires are what we will inevitably attract for our biggest soul growth. So although you don't connect to the word desire, how I'm feeling your story is you are guided to be in Italy, mortgage-free, living this conscious, present, healing season of your life.
That's it. I think that's really clarified it for me, because the ego desire is the only desire I consciously am aware of. But what you've described is, to me, self-relationship. And that is just the knowing that I have and the commitment to making that possible, to making those needs met possible. And so then I think I'm just naturally in flow with desire, if it's true.
Which is why you're our guest.
Because if you ask me about desire, and I think I mentioned it in one of the pod chats that we were having during the week, which I do love all of them, by the way, was that thing of before I got sick, I had the corporate life, the income. I'd wanted to leave my job for 6 years, but the money was comfortable. So I was like, it makes no sense. And I was living this normal, constructed 9-to-5 style life where you just try and earn more, buy bigger things, buy more things. And I knew that didn't make sense for me, but I also didn't want to be completely different in the world, because my experience of being different in the world as a child was quite a negative thing. And so I was kind of one step in the corporate world with the one step out of it. Because for me, desire made no sense. It was just more money for more things that keep me stuck in a job that I need more things to make me happy in, that I need more money to buy the things to make me happy in. And so although I wish I still had my full health, well, I didn't even have it then, but I wish I hadn't have had to get sick to have been forced to make this change, but I've no regrets because I am completely living a life that's aligned with me, that makes sense to me, and I earn a huge amount less than I ever thought possible for someone to live on, but I live a life that is abundant, like it's just so free. It's
Yeah,
easy.
I love that. And I think there's just like a really important point here is that, obviously I have a special affinity for words, working in messaging and all that kind of stuff. But for me, words are signposts, right? Words are always just signposts to greater meanings. And sometimes certain words, although from one person they point in the direction of, this soulful truth and things like that, to somebody else, that the word desire can mean a completely different thing, which is why I think it's really important to have this conversation and bring in these different perspectives like yours, Solace, as well, so we can get that nuance, so that people can be like, oh yeah, actually I can interpret this and explore this in a different way. And again, that's just to plug the pod, but that's why I think it's so beautiful that we have this community of women from all over the world, from all different backgrounds and different experiences, because we get to learn from each other and we get to experience different perspectives, different insights. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things about being human, right? Is that everybody gets to have their own experience, and yet when we share it, there's always commonality, there's always things we can learn from each other. So it's just, I just wanted to drop that in there, that even if anybody's listening right now and thinking, actually I don't really resonate with desire, maybe there's just a different way for you to explore what that means for you personally.
Yeah, and I think one of the beautiful things about the pod, especially the circle sessions, and as you know, I do use them quite a lot to help me process my thoughts and feelings and grow in my viewpoint, is that part where one of my favorite things about being a human, and because I know myself so well, you're not trying to hide yourself. You're not busy, distracted, trying to hide yourself from the world. And so you're able to go, hey, this is the only view I have right now of this thing that's happening to me, and I don't want it to be the only view. Can you guys give me your perspective, give me your experience? And like, because I remember when I was younger and I was very protected because I felt like there was so much wrong with me inside, I would never have been able to go, I want to see your view and understand it, because I would have been like, I don't think I'm ready for anything else. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, like I feel like I've grown and learned from you, Becky S., like just from that ego desire and soul desire differentiation. I'm like, I've learned something. I'm able to see a pathway that's arisen in a different direction. I'm like, like this constantly evolving this, because when you're not trying to control yourself or control how you're perceived by the outside world, you can just be this floating thing that keeps on growing and viewing different things differently. I mean, I love it. And so like the variety in the pod is amazing. And the fact that even though it is about supporting us in business, it's humans in business. And I think a lot of biz communities, especially some of the more money-driven focused ones, they don't nurture you as an individual and a human who is trying to run business. They just nurture you as a person who is doing marketing, sales, promotion sort of stuff. It's like a cross between chat with your friends and therapy. Like the circle sessions? Because it is. You just go in, you can be as vulnerable as you need, share what you need, and there's always kindness returned, but there's always different perspectives and guidance and support. It is a really abundant thing that you have created.
Well, we both get so much out of actually being part of it as well. So it's this wonderful community. And it's funny, like, when you said, as when you were younger, that you didn't necessarily fit in and maybe you felt different, Becky and I were having this conversation. I can't remember when we were like, that was us in school too, right? Totally like almost feeling like the misfit, like not quite understanding what everybody else is sort of like, what their journey is, and feeling on the outside looking in. And it's weird because I feel like within the pod, it's almost forming this home for people that look at the mainstream way of things, that look at the traditional trajectories, the traditional ways that you should do business or whatever, and really aren't resonating with it, and feeling like it's them, they're the problem. And actually what we're doing collectively is actually showing, no, hold on, you can do business however the heck you want. You just have to have that like ability to trust yourself and to be vulnerable. And actually I think in those circle sessions, getting to just express how you feel in the moment. And like a big aspect of the pod, what we preach and have as one of our boundaries is that we don't try and fix each other. That's not what it's about. Like, we're not here to say like, bring your problems and we'll give you a solution. That is not the vibe. It's where we're here to just witness each other and to offer different perspectives, maybe, if that's helpful. So yeah, I love I love being a part of it just as much as I love running it. And I love that we have people like you in there as well, Solas, that again just bring this beautiful perspective. And even like, not to make it about age, and hopefully it's not awkward in any way me saying this, but we have like a range of people. So we have people like in their early 20s, and then I don't actually know how old.
I'm 42.
I was like, I don't want to out you, Solas.
I've no qualms. I am 42. I mean, my body feels 70 and my spirit feels 23, but my actual years is 42.
I'm not far behind you, Solas, don't worry.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know. I remember turning 30. I remember, like, as you say, I didn't fit in, and I didn't want to fit in. That was the problem. I didn't want to play the game. And so there was always this half-hearted attempt in some areas and then just not even partaking in others. So I grew up as a non-drinker in Ireland, which is just pretty rare. And I backpacked and traveled the world in my 20s, never drinking, never taking any drugs. Again, very rare, and I got a lot of prejudice against it. So I remember my last day of being 29, looking in the mirror and being like, tomorrow. So the next day I turned 30, I look in the mirror and I'm like, not bad for a 30-year-old. Like, because my body as a 29-year-old didn't fit the aesthetics I thought it should, but my body as a 30-year-old one day later was like, not bad for 30. And then I was like, yes, no, I'm not abnormal for not drinking. I'm just too mature to go out on boozes. I now go to restaurants, which actually the truth was, do you know what I mean? But I felt like I was at an age where the normal things about me, for me, were more socially acceptable, like going out for dinner and having drinks with dinner, or in my case, not drinks, but no one quite noticed because it wasn't sitting in a pub not drinking.
Bringing it back, having that range of experiences, but all kind of having a similar thread of, it might be that we grew up in different eras or whatever. Era sounds longer, and like we're much more
Don't
further
age us, Becky.
I know, like I turn 34 next week, just putting it out there so that we're all
different millennia.
That's it. But yeah, having like different experiences. But I guess it's because the reason I'm sort of saying it and laughing about it at the same time is that the world has changed very quickly, right? There's people now that were alive while the internet was here at the same time. They don't remember times without internet. So it is vastly different, our experiences. But I think, again, like, it's that human experience within it that we can always come back to, of like, doesn't matter when you were born, doesn't matter how old you are. We all, as humans, in a certain place in the world or whatever, we all have felt different. We all have felt like we haven't fitted in, and actually being able to find community. And that's the joy of the internet, right? That's the joy of having it, is that we can all connect from all different places in the world, which is just incredible.
Well, I think because the pod, markets its essence of doing business differently, you do attract people who do life in turn differently. And actually, I was chatting to one of the girls last night on Instagram DMs, and I didn't realize she's child-free by choice too. And I was like, actually, I think there's a few of us in the pod that are child-free by choice. And again, child-free by choice in my day was a minority, and you got told that you'll change your mind eventually. You'll realize that you do want them, because everyone does. And it's like, oh wow, like I've never met so many people in one place that either have like neurodivergency or lifestyle, preferences that are different to the norm. And it's so refreshing, so refreshing.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I love it. As I'm relatively new to the pod, co-hosting from this month, it is just incredible the people that are in the pod, and I think especially around your story, Solas, around you mentioned in a circle session recently around this like just aligned living, right? It's this consciousness of whether you call it desire, whether it's just presence with yourself, this relationship with yourself. What's really beautiful about how you navigate your business and life is around this connection, and I think that's really powerful to share. Are you happy to share like what that looks like for you, and if you've got any tips for anyone of like building that within themselves and their business?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest disservices I do for the work that I do is that I don't realize how much feels natural for me that doesn't for other people. And so it is like I say, it's come through years of having chats with myself in my head to figure out what was my voice and what wasn't, to figure out what emotions were keeping me trapped in a place that didn't feel right for me, be it a mindset or a job or a relationship or something. So I have a big passion, and one of my loves to do with clients, and I think it's some of the most valuable work I do with them is actually mapping back. And so what I do is we look at how you function now. So it works really well through the written format, through the journey book service that I have. We're able to see your thinking and behaving patterns and default things that you wouldn't quite notice. And when you're using someone's words that they've written to reflect it back to them, it's really a great way for them to clearly see, oh God, yeah, okay, and see where contradictions come throughout the answers that they give. And what we do is, when I'm able to point these out, we start to pattern back. We follow the thread backwards to figure out, where did that thinking pattern form? And normally it's in childhood. You start to look into childhood and to the environment that you as a child, an innocent child who took everything at face value as like, this is how life is, this is how love is, this is how people are. You start to really be able to see clearly where the deformity in the wiring came about. And it's profound in how it frees people from this stuck mindsetness. But unless you're willing to do that level of exploration, that understanding of, okay, I need to look at myself and be like, who am I? I'm willing to accept whoever I am. But I might have to delve into some darky, murky places. One where I might judge people that I meant to love in my life, or a place where I don't really want to go back to. But you're doing it guided and supported, and the work is actually quite quick in when you do this mapping back. It's so clear to see once I'm working one-on-one with someone, to get them to see, oh, that's why I think this way in relationships. I didn't even twig it to that kind of incident that happened, or that kind of environment that I was in. And so I've always done this work with myself. So my style of working with people is very different to traditional therapy, because it is more engaged. I will have discussions. I will ask questions that might feel a little confronting or deep, or, whatever. Traditional therapy wasn't my greatest asset in my healing journey. And I remember when I came out of like years of psychotherapy, I was like, okay, I'm out of survival mode. I'm not wanting to die anymore, but how do I live? Who shows me how to live? Because all I've ever known since I was a young child was survival thinking, was the energy within my body being, survivalist, expecting the worst, being ready for the worst, completely exhausted. And I remember thinking, who shows me how to live? I'm realizing that no one was going to show me how to live. I had to figure that out. Well, I started my businesses based on that. If you want to know who you are, and you want to know how you actually want to live in this world, live your life, and you want permission to do so, then we're able to do all that. I've always had a relationship with myself, and I always loved myself. I just didn't believe that other people could love me, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And so if you grow up in an environment where it's don't be you, don't do this, you kind of learn how to be your own little cheerleader on the inside. I know that some people in that environment would have just completely lost themselves, but for some reason I didn't. I've always had a strong thread of an essence. Again, I come back to, I know I'm a good person. I know I'm full of love and caring. I'm not saying I'm perfect, or any of that. And so it just became about, I want to know me as much as I know other people. Like,
Yeah.
I live inside myself. Like, it's a 24/7. Like, we dream
Yeah.
together. We're gonna freaking die together. And I mean, I have multiple chronic illnesses. I've been through decades of mental ill health. It's not like it's all a breeze.
Yeah.
But one of the things I will say is having a strong self relationship really helps you be able to differentiate between your depression, so like suicidal ideation, and who you are, like, to know the difference, which is very valuable. It's still a really horrible space to be in, but you're kind of able to still be like, no, that's not my voice saying that. That's the illness. But yeah, do you know what? I think it just came from a desire to find peace.
Yeah.
And you cannot find peace in the world if you don't have it inside yourself.
Ugh.
Like,
Yeah. And I'm going to say, like, it's funny. Sometimes I think we try and like, oh, where did it come from? Where did it come from? Personally, I believe that some of us, we just have things within us, and actually it's always been there. So that your ability to believe consistently in yourself, despite everybody else maybe saying otherwise, is just part of who you are as a person and as an individual on this planet, and actually is what almost makes you perfectly placed to support people that don't have that belief and that have struggled with it, because you will be able to hold it with utter knowing that everybody else is that way too. Everybody else is worthy of love. Everybody else is worthy of recognition, is worthy of all these things that like on that soul cellular level to be true. You can hold that for maybe people that are a bit shakier in that belief, which is what makes you perfectly placed. And whether you want to talk about like life purpose and dharma and whatever, it kind of doesn't matter how we approach it or dress it up. I think within us we tend to have like kind of like a calling, kind of like something that is so rock solid. And again, as you progress through life and other things drop away, it's the thing that always remains there. And actually, we don't need to justify why it's there. We don't need to search for it's like, it's like, no, this is, and that's what's brilliant and wonderful about you. And also, I'm just gonna again tout in the pod, but you are going to be hosting a workshop for us in December as well, taking us all through some journaling exercises. So if anybody's listening to this and is like, oh my god, I'd love to have Solace in my life, firstly, do go check her out, and I'll get you to share your links in a second. But also inside the pod in December, Solace is going to be leading us through and I'm not going to say what it's about because it'll be revealing the theme ahead of time. So we're going to have that air of mystery. But Solace will be leading our knowledge sharing session, which are always member-led sessions that we have every month, led by a different community member. And Solace is going to be doing that for us in December, which I'm super excited about. And while we're on this topic, Solace, if people do want to find you, where is best for them to do so?
www.solasforest.com.
And how are you spelling Solace?
Solace. So like that safe place and sanctuary. Yeah.
And you're also on Instagram and on Substack. I'm going to do it for you. So
I am on all those places. They are linked to my website.
We'll drop all the links. Yeah, we'll drop them all in the show notes. So wherever anybody's listening, they can come and find you as well.
Or just come to the pod, because I'm there for most for most of our call sessions. I'm there. I gotta say, like, truly, I do have to say, like, it is a huge addition to my week. I joined a different biz group, which is great. I think about 2 years ago, and at that point in my life, phone call, weekly kind of video calls would not have been welcome. And so that was perfect for then. But then I got to the point where I felt it was lacking, because although we had a chat group, so for me, my life is just there's such a great addition to my week for the human connection as someone who's an introvert and likes to just hang out mostly on their own, because we just get into deep and important stuff. Which is my favorite kind of interaction, because of the work I do, and it's hugely based on my default personality. I just really love deep conversations or philosophical conversations around any topic.
Yeah, it's nourishing, right?
The pod provides that, like it does, and like even just as I say, like the outside connections, like DMing some of the girls outside of, or even just like WhatsApp voice messaging business ideas, and we do that I do that with a couple of them back and forth, so we can kind of just check out with each other what we think and stimulate but anyway, it is fabulous, and it's absolute value for money. If the membership market was any better, I would say up your price massively, but the membership market is what it is.
Yeah, well, part of it is that we want to be able to make it accessible for people. We want people to feel like this is a place where they can come, and also that people don't have to take part in every single aspect of what we offer inside the pod to get value of it. That's a really strong belief. No. So even if somebody is like, do you know what, I just want to come along for this one thing, it's definitely, it's more, any individual thing, I personally believe more than equates to what you actually invest in it. But
I would agree. At one point I was like, I think I'm the person who goes to the most calls, like that means I get the absolute most value for my money.
Amazing. Well, it has been so lovely to chat to you today, Solas.
Did we talk about desire? Did I?
We absolutely did talk about desire. Of course we did. And that's the thing, right? It's not about like, again, with the themes, with the pod, with all of it, it's not about us trying to fit in or tick boxes or anything like that. Everything that we do inside the pod is an invitation. Everything. So even just taking this theme of desire and even this conversation today, it's like, this is where we're going to start, and we're going to see where it takes us, because life isn't about trying to define where we're going ahead of time, right? It's about setting the intention to go off on a journey and just see where the heck we end up. And that's the beauty of it. That's the joy of it. And that's what we're all here to do it together, because we don't have to walk this alone. We can walk our own paths, but we don't have to actually do it alone. So thank you so much for your time with us today. And like I said, we'll drop the show notes for all of Solace's information and information about the pod beneath this episode, wherever you are watching or listening. And we hope that we will hear from you guys soon.
Thank you, Solace. That was so beautiful.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And if you're listening to this over on our Substack, we'd love for you to join the conversation and let us know your thoughts too.
Likewise, if you actively want to explore what doing business differently looks like for you, then do be sure to check out the pod, which is our private community where we share a bunch of resources every month for you to play with as you define your way of doing things.
Inside the pod, there's also a ton of live sessions held every month too, from community circles, clarity clinics, hot seat coaching, moon mornings, and member-led knowledge sharing sessions. To check it out, just head to the show notes below where everything is linked for you to explore further.
Thanks so much for listening. Speak soon.
Lots of love.